Hi everyone. If you'd have told me that I was going to be in this situation literally a couple of months ago, I probably would have laughed. It's a bit of a whirlwind for me being here today, but I'm so grateful that there are so many people in one space that are like me, and that is really beautiful. And a huge thank you to Rachel for inviting me to talk today as well. And I am very nervous right now, so hopefully it'll calm down. I guess just wanting to introduce myself to begin with and sort of talk about what I'm about and my journey. And the one thing I do want to speak about today on behalf of everybody here, and especially women who are in exactly the same situation as myself, and I guess this is why you're here today, is that I guess, if you are a woman with ADHD and you've been masking all your life, raise your hand. Wow. Well, I just want to say you're not alone. And that's really powerful that you've come here today and you're exploring in your later years why you've potentially been masking all of your life. And I think that's really beautiful. So I want you all to give yourselves a pat on the back for coming down today and just addressing that as well. But I guess the one main thing that it seems that other people have been doing when they've stood up on the stage is talk about their experiences and how their journey of ADHD has led them to be here today. So I guess in my experience, it was a little bit of a different scenario than potentially other people. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 11 years of age, and even though that was the case, that did not give me an insight into how being an ADHD-er or ADHD-er as an adult actually was going to impact me. And as a child, I was definitely the attentive kid in the classroom. I wasn't throwing the chairs around the classroom. I wasn't, out of focus. It seemed that I was quite a good kid in school, when actually what I understood is that I wasn't retaining any of the information, and I was just smiling politely. And then it got to a point where I was put into different education by my parents because they thought that they were going to support me with the best possible way. And what they understood is that it was because of the way I was being taught wasn't actually the way that I needed to be taught in order for me to understand my ADHD. So there was a lot of things coming up over the years, and then obviously there were things that now I look back and realise, actually, yes, they were ADHD, the anger outbursts, especially with my mum. So that was another thing that I think somebody else touched upon earlier, which is really interesting, is that, my parents, I'm pretty sure, both have undiagnosed ADHD, and it makes a lot of sense now growing up. But long story short, I got through my whole sort of school years, sort of getting by, didn't really understand, what my ADHD meant. I just thought that it meant that I wasn't concentrating. And then we came to adulthood, and that was a completely different scenario. I didn't understand why I couldn't regulate my emotions. My relationships were absolutely chaos. Very, very volatile in my relationships. I could see a lot of nodding heads here as well. And there was just a lot of things that were coming up for me that I didn't actually understand were my ADHD. And then this leads me to probably the most important year of my life, which has been the past year. And I, up until last year, was just a generic fitness coach, which actually stemmed from me building up my social media platform in kind of an addictive way, which we'll get into as well, because I think other people have been speaking about addiction here, which is really interesting. And it wasn't until I met my fantastic partner that I now am with, Jack, and we basically started to be more aware of the things that potentially were my ADHD in relationships, and how a lot of the things that I was doing as a female, just in general, were part of my ADHD. And now it's kind of led me to now build my business, helping other women that also have ADHD. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask me? No? Okay, cool. I feel like that's a good little breakup for me.
I have.
Go for it.
How much is food part of your treatment or yourself?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think, skipping on from my story, which we can go back to, what I understood and why I actually connected with Rachel, which is phenomenal, is that I started sharing about ADHD on my page, and then it went from me sharing it to then generically coaching females that have ADHD or have suspected ADHD. And then I started looking into the nutrition side of things. And then that kind of took a 360 with my journey with my nutrition as well, where I found out that I was potential celiac disease and I had a heavy gluten intolerance. And then that was kind of like a wow moment for me, because I didn't realize the correlation between nutrition and ADHD, and how, of course, our gut is connected to our brain. This all works as one. And then if your gut's not happy, your brain's not happy, causing brain fog, causing things like lack of concentration, things that we struggle with ADHD as well. So as a whole, to answer your question, on my coaching program, I definitely work very closely with the women that I coach to enable them to understand that potentially certain food groups in their diet may not be the best for their ADHD. And that also goes with other things like additives, preservatives, things that are going to give you a bit of an overstimulation in a short space of time normally aren't probably the best thing for your ADHD as well. Yeah. And yeah, I guess going back to the situation regarding the whole ADHD functional fitness coach. So how did that all begin? As I've spoken about, I, of course, was 11, got to my adult years and thought, wow, okay, this is a completely different ballgame. I actually started off coming to London at the age of 21, and I had no idea what that was going to hold for me. I was the classic, told that, you can do this, that, and the other, and I went to performing school because my parents thought I was gifted, talented, and special. What I didn't actually understand was that was me masking, and I'm not actually a huge extrovert, I'm actually an extroverted introvert. But yeah, I do enjoy the performance side of things, and that seemed to get me quite far. So I thought, why not move to London and, try and make a career out of it? I very early understood that being in the performance industry in London, it's very cutthroat. You need a lot of confidence. I was very young, and I just didn't really feel like I had what it took, and my self-esteem was quite low. That then led me to sort of delve into the fitness industry and work for various studios in London and sort of, try and get myself out there in the fitness scene. And this was when it kind of built up to my Instagram page that Rachel very kindly mentioned earlier, has got quite a strong following. But I just want to put it out there, guys, I will be 100% real with you. That following came from being in a very unhealthy place. And now I understand that that was actually part of the addictive side to the ADHD and the impulsivity as well, where it got to a point where I was very fixated on numbers. And I know it's funny how other people here might be sat here thinking, oh yeah, I've had a gambling addiction, I've had a drug addiction, alcohol, all of these things. But for me, it was the social media, which was heavily based on my self-worth as well. If I didn't get a certain amount of likes on a post, I would be, shaking. I had, in my head, I had like a hyperfixation on having to post every single day at 8 a.m. in the morning. If I didn't post then, I'd have a meltdown. And all of these things I didn't realise were, again, all part of the same situation that was going on in my brain and also part of this condition that I have. But ironically, it did build things up to get to a point where, the following was growing quite large. But again, it wasn't until about a year ago that I started to understand that that was, quite an unhealthy thing that I was putting myself under. The pressure, the feeling of, being validated. If I had a good day, it didn't matter if, my audience on Instagram didn't think that it was a good day. And then that kind of led me to delving into other areas where I was an in-person personal trainer, then I moved into online coaching. Now, I don't know if anybody in the room who has ADHD can relate, but I hate technology. I fucking hate it. The irony of being a great leader as a business owner with ADHD, but you hate doing all the background stuff. So my fantastic partner, Jack, he's also an online coach, and he was like, Amie, this is great, you can scale so much more online, and I just didn't understand the concept, and we're still working on it now. But, okay, no worries. Yeah, and then long story short, basically, this then led me to be on a business mentorship where they said, look, Amie, you need to take on this niche, which is helping women with ADHD. And as much as it was really hard for me, and I still now feel uncomfortable sometimes posting about it on my page, And I felt embarrassed to begin with. I now understand from having so many positive messages from women on my page through Instagram that, you know, there are so many of you now finding out later in your lives, or that all of your life you've been masking your ADHD, and now you're finally speaking up. And I stand by what I say. I'm very early in the stages of my journey, but I want to enable women to feel like they've got a place and they don't have to keep up this facade that they have all their lives, because that's fucking draining.